the passionate leader, because leadership without passion is just a title.
Meeting. We got a collapse in the garage. Get the squad back coming in here. We got an I-beam pond to a firefighter.
Get that island urgent. Transmit a second along.
This is where titles end and leadership begins. Ask yourself, how many firefighters have you checked in on this week? Now ask yourself, when was the last time you were honest about how you were doing? Not the station bullshit answer, not the joke, not the deflection, but the real answer. Somewhere along the way, many of us were taught that carrying the weight alone was part of the job. We convinced ourselves that nightmares, the anger, the sleepless nights, and the stress are just things that we have to deal with. But what if they aren't? We spend our careers saving others, yet so many firefighters and first responders struggle to ask for help when they're the ones who need saving. Tonight, we're joined by FDNY Lieutenant Christopher Sweeney. After nearly 2 decades in the fire service and a career that included some law enforcement before joining FDNY, Chris was diagnosed with PTSD as a direct result of the job. Instead of suffering in silence, he chose to speak up. Today, through the After the Signal project, he's helping break the stigma surrounding PTSD, mental wellness, and suicide in the first responder community, while reminding others that asking for help is not weakness, it is courage. Because it's okay to not be okay, but as Chris says, it's not okay to stay that way. Before we get to the conversation, let's get to our sponsor for the day. Today's episode is brought to us by the First Do Project and the Fire and Foliage Symposium, happening October 16th and 17th in Nashua, New Hampshire. Born out of the belief that too many fire conferences have become about attendance numbers, social media posts, and packed schedules, at Fire and Foliage, you're not a number. You're a firefighter, an officer, a mentor, or somebody simply trying to become better than you were yesterday. With the First Do Project, we believe every firefighter deserves the opportunity to grow, regardless of rank, title, or budget. That's why we're committed to affordable education, meaningful conversations, and creating an experience where people actually connect instead of just passing through. If that sounds like the kind of environment you're looking for, visit us at firstdoproject.org for tickets, and we'll see you in October. Now that it's done, let's get to the show, our guest, Chris Sweeney. Before we do get to that, I do need to actually throw a disclaimer out there. Today's episode is going to talk about some stuff, and it's important that we make a clear point that this is not the views and opinions of myself or Christopher's employers, and it is that of ours. So keep in mind, when we speak, we're speaking from our heart, from our mind, and through our mouths, and not as a representative of our agencies. Let's get to the conversation. I kind of gave the baby all the 9 months as far as how what you are in the fire service, but why don't you kind of walk us through who you are, how you got into the fire service, and where you finally had that moment of clarity and left the law enforcement world and joined the fire side.
Well, I guess I always wanted to be a firefighter, right? But I took the police officer's test when I was young, and I got called for the NYPD in 2004. I had just turned 21 2 months prior. So I started in the NYPD. I did a little over 2 years in the NYPD. And then in 2006, I switched over to the fire department. And I've been part of the FDNY, a little over 20 years now. I'm a lieutenant now the last 7 years. Most of my career was in Queens until I got promoted, and now I'm in Brownsville, Brooklyn.
Nice.
And love it, love it. Best job in the world.
Now, did you catch any flack from your brothers in blue and when you switched sides?
No, it's especially in New York, right? It's amazing how you could stand on the same corner, wear 2 different uniforms, and be treated completely differently just by the uniform you wear, right?
Yeah.
I'm back in that same area now, and that I was when I was a police officer, and it's treated just different. People love firemen, and they don't really like cops that much, but I do miss the job. I miss the people I used to work with. It's a tough job for them. They have a terrible, not terrible. They have a really tough time, and they have a very hard job. So I still pray for them every day, and so
Yeah. What do you actually? So that being said, I mean, New York City is enormous. It's much larger than the area where I'm from. Now, do you have the opportunity sometimes to run into some former colleagues, at calls and stuff like that, or are you
But
guys
yeah,
still
yeah,
pretty
yeah, some of
far?
them are retired now. A lot of NYPD cops, they do 20 years and they leave. Not
Gotcha.
many stay past 20 anymore. The job is just it's changed a lot. So but yeah, I actually was just in touch with my old partner. She did 26 years. I was in touch with her the other day. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do still speak to some of my colleagues, and yeah, it's good. They're good.
Dude, that's a lot. 26 years is a long time, no matter what side of the aisle people sit or stand on. That's a long time to be given to a city where the stuff and the crap that you must see is insane, dude. My hat's off to you. Coming from a guy who you see probably more calls in one day than I might see in a week, if we're being honest. So, but
We
that,
do. Yeah, we're pretty busy. I on the average day we could do anywhere from you know 12 to 15 to 30 calls in a day. You know,
jeez, yeah. Well,
so it beats you up a little bit.
Well, and it probably obviously helps contribute into to the diagnosis of PTSD and such. So, um, let's go right. We'll dive right into it. So, leading up to your diagnosis of having PTSD, what were some of the signs and symptoms that like was it just accumulation of bad calls, or kind of walk us through that path?
You know what? I think it was probably accumulation of some bad calls, as well as on the FDNY. I'm part of our safety command, and we investigate fatal fires when a fatal fire happens to one of our own. And I've done several of those investigations. Some of them, one of them I actually operated at, and was there, when the firefighter passed away. So um, I want to say that how do I say it? It's like, I say that I asked for help, but I really didn't ask for help, right? Like I was kind of forced. I snapped, right? And I snapped, and I probably wouldn't have asked for help if I didn't get to that boiling point, and I think that's something important, because a lot of us get to that boiling point before we ask for help, and that's something we need to change. And that's a big part of the After the Signal project, is changing that, and reversing uh, the mentality that we have in the fire service, in the police department, the military. Those things have to change.
Mhm. Um, now, so when you finally, were sort of nudged in the direction to, get help and stuff like that, what were the emotions like, when you finally walked into getting help? And, was it a flood of relief? Was it, because I mean, a lot of people, I guarantee there's more people than just the two of us sitting here that have kind of been on that brink, and it's like I need to go get help, but I'm afraid of what that next step looks like. What did that look like for you, and how did it feel once you started kind of peeling the layers of that onion back?
Yeah, well, like, listen, for me, I tried to harm myself, right? So that's how got help. And I'll be honest with you, I spent 24 hours in a psychiatric hospital, and then I spent 7 days in a psych ward, and then I spent 28 days in a facility for first responders, actually, in mental health facility, mental health, drugs, and alcohol. That was designed just for first responders. There's no civilians there. It was absolutely life changing. But I got to be honest, I was in a psych ward, which was the worst experience of my life. And my goal was to go to this program, just to leave, right? Like, it was a means to an end, right? I can get out of here, go to here, I'm fine. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't do anything wrong, per se, right? So let me just go check the box and get some help, and say I'm getting help. That was my mindset when I entered this program. Um, as a matter of fact, I was in this program 2 days, and I said to the therapist, I said, "Listen," she says, "Oh, Chris, how you doing?" I said, "I'm fine." She goes, "Well, fine doesn't work." And I said, "Listen, do me a favor. Speak to these people here who need help. I'm good. I'm getting out of here." I said, "You can't keep me here. I'm leaving." So this is I was only there 2 days, and now mind you, I've already been gone 8 days, right? So in my head, I'm like, you know, I'm ready to go home. I have 3 children. I have a wife. I kind of just left one night and didn't come home, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So she asked me to speak with her and the owner, and they said, "Give me a week." They said, "If you give us a week and you want to leave, we'll let you leave." I said, okay. And I bought into the program.
Okay.
And that changed my life, right? I actually said, you know what, if I'm going to be here a week, I got nothing to lose. It can only help me. And I was honest, I was open. Probably for the first time ever in my life, I admitted what was bothering me, even to the point of, the diagnosis of PTSD. I mean,
Mm,
I filled out a form. I lied completely on the form, right? I just checked
mm,
no, 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 no. Um, and then when I was having, a therapy session, she tells me, she was, "Chris, you're suffering from major PTSD." And I said, no, I'm not. I said, I don't want to hear that. Don't write that down.
mm,
I have a job to go home to. Um, you know, she goes, when's the last time you slept? I said, I sleep 2 to 3 hours. That was probably the longest amount of sleep that I would get. And, you know, um, even at home, my wife would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd be on my back deck smoking a cigarette, or I'd walk the dog,
mm,
or I'd go to the bar, or I'd go I just leave, because I couldn't sleep because the nightmares and the things that were keeping me up at night. And so she sent me to the psychiatrist, at the therapist, and he says, "Well, your therapist is saying you have PTSD, but your PTSD score is 0." I said, "Well, where'd you get that from?" And he says, "Well, you filled out this form." I said, "Oh, yeah, listen, doc, I lied on that." And he goes,
mm.
"Why?" I said, "Well, I don't know you. I want to go back to work." Like that was my main goal, was work, work, work. And
Yeah, yeah.
and it even now, like I think about it, like how foolish was I, right? Like I'm in a
Yeah.
program and I'm still not being open and honest, right? And I'm
Yep.
surrounded by all of us, right? All first responders, police, fire, military, and it
Sure.
was Secret Service. I mean, FBI agents from across the country, and the place
Mm.
was amazing, and I'm still lying, like.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like, you know, um, it definitely. Uh, then he gave me like a medication to take, right? To help me sleep. And I'm like, "Doc, I don't take medications." He goes, "It's not a
Mm,
narcotic. Just try it." And I slept that night for 8 hours. And it was the first time I probably slept a full 8 hours. And I was like, wow, I feel better. And then I
mm,
really started buying into this program. And and it wasn't like it wasn't all like, it was like life skills, right? Like teaching you different things, the art of listening. And, like how many of us sit down with our phones, come home from work, and, you know, our significant other or your family, they're talking to you and they're like, "Oh, you're not listening." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm listening." No, no, I was listening.
yeah.
I wasn't hearing you. You know what I mean?
For
Like,
sure.
how many of us say, I can recite everything right back to you, what you just said. Yeah, we can, but we weren't listening, So
Yeah.
just things like that, like just basic life skills, and learning that, like, it's okay to say that you're having a bad day, right? Like,
Mm,
it's okay. One of the biggest things that I guess I don't want to say I preach now, but like, we're allowed to have a bad day. You're allowed to bring that bad call home with you. It's
mm,
when it turns into those sleepless nights. It's when it turns into those using drugs or alcohol heavily. You know what I mean? Like, to the point where you're self-medicating. That's
mhm.
when we have to realize and stop ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And those are the things that I think now I'm a lot more aware of, right? It's okay to come home and tell your significant other and say, "Listen, I need a minute," you know? Or the fact to come home and you say, I'm sure we all do it, or I did it a lot. "How's your day?" Like, don't ask that question if you're not ready for the response. And sometimes I would do that. "How's your day?" I'd ask my wife, and she would start telling me, and I didn't care, right? So why am I asking?
Yeah. It's we're trained to just ask that, and we sometimes I feel we just listen for the break. We don't actually listen for the content of what's actually being said, stated. Um, Dude, and it's funny because I'm sure that there's we are, like we said it before, and everybody, there's such a stigma behind, we're supposed to be the heroes and everybody looks up to us, and that in and of itself is stressful, let alone you add the cumulative trauma of how many, life altering things that we see with, shootings or stabbings or fatal fires, or, losing a fellow firefighter at a call, or whatever the case is. We are, heavily exposed to that, where the common public just isn't. And, we're
I think
expected
I
to
think the
know.
number out there is like a regular person in their lifespan will see 5 to 7 traumatic experiences in their life. right?
Yes. Yep.
A firefighter, a police officer, a military in their 20-year career sees 500 to 700. Like
Mm.
that's 5 to 7 to 5 to 700. I mean, just and
Yeah.
like you just said, we're trained a certain way, and we were also trained years and years and years ago in the history of all of our fire departments and police that we're going to see some bad stuff, bury it and move on. And that's
Mm.
was good for a while, right? And that was
Yeah.
until you bury it for so long that eventually it has to go somewhere, you
Right.
know? And we're not good at saying we need help. We're the best at helping others. We're the worst at helping ourselves, you
Mm.
know? How often do you say you're fine? And I'm not putting you on the spot, but like,
Amen.
how are you? I'm fine. You know what that means? That means I'm full of shit. I'm sorry.
Dude, so you just spot, dude. Fine in this house does not mean like actually okay. Fine. I mean, so, and there have been times where even just like on a tired day, I'll one of us, whether it's the wife or me, be like, "How's your day?" or "How you feeling?" "Yeah, I'm fine," and I really am actually fine. But you stop and you're like, "Are you? Or are you giving
Yeah.
me a line of shit?" And
Yep.
and so after a while, it's like, "No, no, I'm okay." So we have to like
Yes.
rephrase how we do it. Dude, I love it, and to hear the gumption that it took to really kind of work through this program is huge. And by no means was it a small undertaking. And for the listeners, guys, everybody, Chris had to go through this. He fought. Don't be, learn from what he had to do, and the resistance that he gave. Be open to it. And so let's get right into after the signal. So did that the idea of that come while you were going through treatment, or was it after you got to the other end and you're like, you know what, this actually could be something bigger for us?
So I would say that it definitely wasn't while I was going through treatment. It was more when I came home. I was open about uh, my experience, which to some people, even some of my coworkers, was they felt like I shouldn't be, that I
Mhm.
should kind of hide what I went through, which is the exact reason and the exact way, part of the reason of why I got to where I was, right? Because I was hiding how I was feeling.
Yep.
So, with my time on the job, I said, you know what? I have enough friends. If someone doesn't want to be my friend, that's okay. But I'm not gonna just not. I'm gonna not talk about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be. Where was I? I'm not gonna say I was. Somebody got hurt in my family. No, I was in a program. Um, and this is why, and this is what I did, and this is what I went through, and um, I wish I didn't get to the point where I did.
Sure.
I'm happy that that point did happen now because it got me to where I am now. So then when I came home, I've gone back to the program. Program is called Harbor of Grace in Habit of Grace, Maryland. Um, and I've gone back to that program several times, and I don't want to say as a guest speaker, um, more as I like to say it as to show the brothers and sisters there that like there's
Mm.
light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like you
Yeah.
can leave this program and be okay, right?
Yeah.
Like
Like an
if you
advocate.
put yeah, like, and I spend the entire day there. I go through the whole program with them. I go to the group settings. I go to the, you know, uh, or everything with them, and I talk for about 45 minutes, just like this, right? Just telling my story, what I went through, where I am now, and it's not all sunshines or rainbows now either. You know what I mean? Like there are some hard days. There are some days when I wake up or I do have a nightmare, and I just use some of the tools that I've learned to deal with them differently now. And that's where after the Signal project came from. I said, you know, I was having a lot of people reach out to me. A lot of first responders don't want their agency to know that they're struggling, right? Um, they truly don't, because they're afraid of the repercussions with work, right? Especially more on
Yep.
the law
Yep.
enforcement side, they're very afraid because they lose their firearm.
Hmm.
As soon as you say you're having a little mental issue, right away they take their gun from them, right? So, which to me, I guess is that's not my job, right? Like, but
Sure.
I understand their hesitation with that. But when so many more people kept on reaching out, I said, you know what? I got to start something. I got to start something. I gotta be an advocate for it. And there's another program out there called First Responder Center of Excellence that does a lot with behavioral health and mental health, as well as cancer research and diets and everything, all for the first responder community. So I spoke with them a little bit. And I said, I'm going to start this, right? And
Mm,
I've now gone and spoke at a couple of different fire department agencies, and it's been so well received that to the fact that every single time I get up and I tell a 15 to 20 minute, it's not a speech. I have a couple of keynotes written down, which I usually go off of it. Like
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
even follow it,
That's awesome.
and I get an email or a phone call almost every single time before I leave there. Oh, brother, I struggle with this, or this is the first time I'm saying this, but I understand what you're saying. So
Yeah.
I think once we realize that it's okay, right?
Mm,
And the more of us that can speak up and say, "Yeah, brother, I've been there." You know what I mean? Like I attempted to harm myself.
mm,
Like it's not a joke. You know what I mean? Like um, we I'm sure it's the same. We keep on making T-shirts for our fallen brothers and sisters. Like I don't want any more of those T-shirts.
right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the reason for the After the Signal project, right? And I use the term like we can wear the message so we can start the conversation, right? And
Mm,
um, I have a shirt on now after the Signal Project, and the back says, listen more, judge less, right?
yep.
And I was just picking my son up and standing outside. Lady said, I love your shirt, you know? And she goes, what's it mean? And I explained it to her. And it was like, just by me standing there, not talking to anybody, like that's the whole purpose of it. And it's working, right? So
Mm,
the
that's
After
good
Signal
stuff.
Project, I think, can really continue with organizations like yours, and if
Yeah.
more of us speak up and collaborate together, we can normalize what we see on an everyday basis, right? And
Mm,
our bodies were not trained to see the trauma we see. You know,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
it's just not what like the human body, like mind, is not capable. We're just not capable to handle it all.
No.
We think we are.
Well, and you add on what just the general shift work of what you have does, right? You can have super slow nights, probably not so much, but you can have slower than normal nights or busier than normal nights, and that already that'll mess up your circadian rhythm too, and that already gets your body on high alert, and just like the hair on the back of everybody's neck, it's already standing up, and now you add trauma to it, and it's just it compounds, and there's nothing left or more to do than just keep filling that bucket, and eventually that bucket's going to overflow. It's either going to overflow and you're going to spill it on the floor, or you're just going to end up wearing it, type thing. Dude, it's this is awesome stuff. I'm super stoked. um Back to you talk about the coworkers, and obviously not looking for names or any judge. So did you find that when you find the difference between some that accept and some that don't, is there a certain, I don't want to say age group, but is it more the younger guys that are a little more accepting of, the mental health awareness and, accepting of opening up about stuff?
100%. The young guys are much more open to it. It's more normalized for them, right? Because
Yeah.
the training is and the speaking about it is more and more. The older
Yep.
guys, guys with a little bit more time on the job, they're the ones that are kind of more, enough. Like you're weak. And
Yeah.
that's where I think is the biggest change has to happen, and it's changing. I'm not going to say that there's no change, and I've had a lot of positive support as well.
Yeah.
From coworkers and stuff like that. But it definitely is changing. But like anything else in the fire service and military and police department, it takes time, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody ever wanted to clean their bunker gear, right? I mean, at least in the city,
Yeah.
they did. Now it's
Yep.
like goes out all the time, right? Like we but it takes time. We're not good at change, you
Well,
know.
in it's unfortunate because obviously I know that some that are, of this thought process of, you should be tougher than, have probably seen you specifically do some pretty badass crawl down a hallway and save kids type stuff that, they're like, man, Chris is a strong guy. And all of a sudden you do this, it's like, oh, he's actually, that's the unfortunate part, is where we start drawing this line in the sand of it's acceptable for us to do crazy cowboy stuff on the fire ground. But then when it's like, hey, timeout, I ain't doing good up top. My head's messed. I need to go get some help for this. Oh, you're really weak. It's like, no, it's not, dude. I mean, you guys are exposed to some crazy freaking stuff. And I'm glad to hear that, because what it tells me with it being the younger generation, or the newer members, is hopefully and eventually we'll see through attrition that stigma will slowly start to kind of, we'll see the ship turn course. And it's like you said, it's being taught now, to firefighters. Now to that, how have you been able to take some of the things that you've learned from your time in getting help, as well as through after the signal, and bring it into the firehouse post call, and for your guys' shifts and stuff like that?
So I'll tell you this. So there's one thing that we think every fire service does the same, which is after a structural fire, what do? We come back, we talk about it, and we have no problem sitting around a kitchen table or the apparatus or standing in front of a building and talking about what we all did at that call for hours, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yep.
what we don't talk about is the CPR run or
Mm,
the so now I take that time. Now it doesn't have to be a round table exercise, right? It could be just looking at your crew and saying, you know what? John Doe just had a baby. We just had a bad call with an infant. I'm going to put us out of service for 15 minutes. Let everyone wash up.
mm.
Call home and speak to your wife. Speak to your kid. FaceTime. Maybe that's all that's needed, right?
Yeah.
Instead
Yeah.
of instead of all right, get back in the sink, start cutting the chicken cutlets.
Yeah.
m- m- you know. Sometimes it's that little that we're learning now, and I've done a lot of research on it since. And I should have said this in the beginning. I'm not a clinician. Um, I don't have any background in that. I'm doing a lot of this research on my own and reading some books and finding a lot of useful information. And the studies have shown that 15 or 10-minute pause, the way we do after a structural fire, and
Mm.
we don't have to bring up the details of the call, but just saying, you know what, we're out of service 15 minutes, guys, go take a shower.
Yeah.
Maybe that
Yeah.
just you reset your brain, right? And then you got to be able to look as leaders too. We got to be able to look at our crew and say, you know what, he's not right.
Mm.
And you got to approach that person and say, you're not right. Doesn't mean you have to go away for 35 days or 40 days. And
Sure. Yeah.
that's a misconception, right? People think, oh my God, I have to go away or I got to leave my family for 40 days. No, you have to leave your family when you do what I did, right? When you wait until it's too late.
Yeah.
But now I speak to a therapist weekly, and I'm not afraid to say it, right? And it's more maintenance. And the more people that I've spoken, a good friend of mine is a surgeon. He speaks to a therapist. Other like the regular people speak to therapists all the time. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm.
Um, and it's truly like mind maintenance, I call it. Maybe
Yeah.
there's some things you don't want to tell your wife, you don't want to tell your significant other, your mother, your father, but you can unload it on that therapist and you feel different, you know?
Yeah.
And just by having
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
conversation, it changes your whole mindset.
Now, has there been any thought process in the okay, we are talking about one of the biggest. It's not even one of, it's the biggest fire department in the freaking world. Has there ever been any thought process to trying to get it so that it's now almost like a standing order that post, bad call or something like that, that the 15-minute out of service is, acceptable for the company? Because I think
Um,
you're onto something with this.
I think that's going to be the company officers have a lot of discretion
Okay.
in that. I mean, um, I don't know if there's any. I haven't had that conversation with the higher ups and stuff like that to make that a standard rule.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, listen, I think I think for some that 10 or 15 minutes is great, and for others they just don't want to think about it. They want to get back on the rig and do it again, right?
Fair.
Like
Yep.
so I think it's a hard thing to make a set rule. I think it's got to be a case by case basis. That's just my
Mm.
opinion,
I
and
like it.
you
Yeah.
know, it's like sometimes, especially, maybe just going on that next call in your own head erases that previous one and you kind of refresh,
Mm.
and maybe that's
Yeah.
sometimes what people need. Everyone reacts differently, and
Yeah.
there's no textbook answers to this. Um, and
True.
that's why it's so important that we keep on discussing it. That's how I feel.
No, dude, you're excuse me, you're on it, and it's funny because I had a guest on way way back in the beginning of when I started doing this about a year ago. And previous to talking with this guest, I had a really hard belief that you know, critical stress debriefs post traumatic events should be a mandatory thing. But it wasn't until him and I got on the show and we talked about it. He's like, actually, he goes, you could do more harm if you actually force people to go to it. If say somebody's not having a hard time with it and you force them to come anyways, and now all of a sudden you just took somebody who was actually in a good place, brought them into a bad place, and then the person that's in a bad place is kind of like, I'm getting in, so it's crazy how like you said it, man, it's case by case, person by person. To know that you have the autonomy to be like, yeah, that was a pretty bad one. We're gonna hold pause on the engine getting back, back into the rotation, and we're gonna take some time to kind of do what we need to do. And honestly, like, I'll be very honest, some of the bad calls, I'm fortunate enough where my wife is on the department with us, so it's easy enough for we can debrief at the house together. But um like at our, not the firehouse, but like at our home house. Um, and she understands sometimes it's just sometimes JP just needs to go sit out on the deck just by himself for a little bit. Just let it go. Um, for me, it's there's certain things that bother me more than others, and just some right now it's able to kind of just certain things just have to sit. But man, you're making good strides. Um I love what you got going on. I think you really have it set up at the house, the firehouse really good. And and it's going to take time. It's going to take as awful as it sounds, man, attrition, retirements, people moving on to either, different boroughs. They're not there to they'll eventually get it. And as awful as it sounds sometimes, I also believe that the ones that are like, man, maybe you're not cut out for the job. It's more of it's not actually them thinking that way about you. It's probably a self-reflection thing. They see something
I
that
think some of them are struggling themselves and they don't want to
yeah.
admit it, you know?
Yeah,
You
which
know?
which I get it. I really, really do. And you hit the nail on the head. There is that stigma that, if I go and I get help, I'm gonna be bounced off of, I'm gonna lose my seat on the truck. And I don't want to do that. I worked hard to get where I'm at. And I just had this discussion with a follower of the show and the platform, and she's younger and she's like, but I don't want to go get help because if I go get help now, I'm gonna lose my job. I'm like, you're not. There's you know, there are things and checks and balances. The cops, yes, it might be a little bit harder, but this is something in the EMS side of the world. So I'm like, you have to go get your brain checked and not check, you know what I mean? Like you go get yourself, help because if you don't, you cannot give a superior level of service to those that you're promising to give that to if you're not in a good position yourself.
So I like to say this, right? We are we in the fire service throughout the country, we are trained very well. We have amazing tools, amazing equipment. We do search drills. We do, high angle rescue drills and engine operations drills. What good is all of that great equipment if you don't have it right in your mind, right? If your
Yeah.
mind's not right to operate it, you're no good, right? So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you're the best department, the worst department in the world, the best equipment, the worst. Like you could be the slowest department in the country with the
Mhm.
best equipment, but if your mind's not right, the equipment means nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I think we tend to forget that sometimes. And I think the one of the big things is having the conversation with amongst the younger guys.
Yeah.
They're going to go to each other, right? There's very few junior firefighters or junior police officers that's going to go to their superior.
Mm.
They're going to go to their someone that's similar in age, similar time on the job, and say, "Hey, listen, did that mess you up a little bit?" And you'd be shocked in how many people would agree then. And he might say, I'm glad you said that because it was bothering me too. Like that's the
Mm.
conversation that they can have a conversation sitting on a couch. And that's their debrief, right? Like, so if we can normalize the conversation, we're automatically, by not even doing anything, unloading that, right? Instead of like you said, there's only so much room in that bucket and then it
Yeah.
overflows. You're not putting it in the bucket. You talked about it, right?
Mm.
And I'm not saying that you can't go out and have a drink. I'm not saying that sometimes some of those calls for certain, a drink is what people
Mm.
do, right? I enjoy my cocktail. Uh, when we start doing that in excess, where it's every night, where it's like I need to
Sure.
drink in order to get the dreams out of my head, like that's when we need to, you know, do a little self check and say, all right,
Mm.
something's not right here, um, and I think that conversation is becoming more and more prevalent in the fire service.
Mm,
And when I speak, or when I've spoken, um, the feedback from some of the junior firefighters is dramatic, right? Like
mm.
they're very, very, especially the volunteer service, right? I like to use this in the volunteer service. It's different than what I do,
Yep.
right? I can go on 15 calls tomorrow night and do CPR on 10 of them
Mm.
and not know a single person I did CPR on, right?
Yes.
So the
Yep.
effect on me, it still could affect me, but the effect on me is a little different. In the
Mm.
volunteer service, you're doing CPR on your friends, your neighbors, your people you see in the grocery store, in the supermarket. Like now that trauma is now tenfold. So
Right. Yeah.
I think in a volunteer service, it's even, even though the stress, the trauma may be less frequent, I think it can have more of an impact. And that young kid who comes to that call, right, that 19 or 20-year-old kid who just joins, he comes, shows up at the firehouse, he goes on the call, he comes back, he signs a book or scans or whatever they do, right?
Hmm.
And then what happens? He goes back to his job.
Yeah.
Who's watching? So we don't know if he's messed up or not. At least for me, I don't leave, right? I can look at
Right.
my guys, you
Yeah.
know. But for that volunteer service, I think it's an EMS on the EMS side. It's you're seeing a lot of trauma that I think that we neglect that young kid is not trained to see that, you know.
Mm.
So
Yeah, dude.
my heart goes out even more to the volunteer service, and our
Yeah.
wildland and even the wildland firefighters, right? Like these guys work so hard, guys and girls,
Mm.
they work so hard and see so much, and then they're just we're just trained to, and we have to. I say break the stigma. We have to break the training. We have to break that philosophy that we're not that we're not immortal, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. How
and I God,
No, no, I was gonna say was how do you think we can break that? Because I mean, and it's there is no magic crystal ball or potion or solution, but what are some ways that you think that we might be able to actually finally get ahead of this rolling freight train that we're trying to keep ahead of, or even catch up with at this point?
I mean, I think we should start with one of the statistics, right? That we lose more firefighters countrywide to suicide than we do line of duty deaths.
Mm.
That's not a fake number. It can be looked up. And in the volunteer service, it's less because it's underreported, right?
Oh, smooth! It's such a good point, dude. Yep.
It's underreported because they don't know. They see an overdose or they see something like that, but they don't know that it was because of that call, right? So it's even more frequent than we see, but it's underreported as a suicide, right? And those all that information can be looked up. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it is 100% true. More first responders died to suicide than we do line of duty deaths. Now, to answer your question, how can we get ahead of that train? It's going to take time, but conversations like this,
Mm.
conversations in your station, conversations about, and not being a hypocrite, right? I can't look at you that you got help and say, oh, I don't want him next to me, and
Yes.
that's what happened to me. Like there was people who said, well, is Chris going to be able to do his job? Well, I did my job well
Mm.
with all of the baggage in my brain,
Yeah.
right? So now, if anything, I unloaded that all. I'm going to be better at my job. Now, I'm not going to say that we can't make mistakes, right? Like
Sure.
mistakes happen. We're human. But as far as the way my mental aspect of it, I have a clearer vision of work now than I ever did in my 20-year career.
Mm.
Because when I feel myself not doing great, I either do a 10-minute meditation or I journal or all things that I thought were, oh, you're weak. This guy's going to journal now. You know what? I try to journal every night, and it's not. I just write down how my day went, good, bad, and that. Sometimes it's a paragraph, sometimes it's 5 pages. You
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
but it kind of unloads my day onto a piece of paper. You
Smart.
know,
Yeah.
and our phones these days, right? You have your phones. There's journaling apps and all these different things you can do. There's so many things you can do. And I listen to podcasts. I try to And I try to truly listen to the people that call and say they're struggling, right? Again, I'm not a clinician. I don't have that background. I just try to help and get you the resources that you need, whether it's There was a firefighter in Wisconsin who called me not too long ago, and I don't know him,
Isn't that
but
crazy?
I said, brother, I don't to give me a zip code, and I did some research, and I found him some therapists, and I said, oh, listen, we can call these ones right now. And he's like,
Yeah.
you think so? I'm like, yeah, let's call him. So we'll call him together, and it's amazing how a a 30-second or a minute TikTok that I did or an Instagram video sitting on a train about, what's going through my brain resonated with somebody else enough for them to reach out to me, Uh, and the After Signal Project, if you look at the website, like the number that's on there, that's my cell phone, right? Like
Yep. Yep.
that's not a business phone. That's the phone that is on me 24/7,
Mm,
So I'm not afraid to answer it. You call 3 in the morning, I'll answer it, At least I hope I will. I
yeah.
try
Yeah.
to, you know. Um, but that's the resources that I want. I think we need to put together a platform for people to be able to reach out to somebody, right? It doesn't have to be me. It could be you. It could be a coworker, and just say, "I'm struggling. I need help," and then go to your department and say, "All right, what kind of resources do we have?" Or don't go to your department. You don't have to.
Mm,
You don't want them to know. Great. You don't want them to know, but
yeah.
go
Oh,
go
yeah.
you go to an go to an outside therapist. You know,
Amen.
if you
Yeah.
look on any of these social media platforms, you can put in post-traumatic stress, you could put in trauma, you could put first responder therapy, and there's hundreds that
Mm,
pop up, I think even the terminology PTSD, I think that from what I'm hearing, they're trying to change that to PTS, post-traumatic stress, because
yes.
when we use the
Yep.
word disorder, we feel that we're diagnosed,
Mm,
right? Oh,
yep.
Chris has got a disorder, you know, you know.
No, I hear
So
you.
like
Yep.
even the word resiliency, right? Yeah, I just read something recently in a book by Dr. Shauna Springer, and it said that using the word resiliency is bad for first responders because we
Okay.
feel like we are resilient already. So if we admit that we're not resilient, we failed.
Oh, yeah.
So she changed the word to elasticity,
Okay.
and all of a sudden the buy-in is completely different, right? It's amazing how
Totally.
one word, one letter, right? Because you sit in
Yeah.
the room and say, "Oh, well, listen, FDNY, we got to be resilient, right?" Like so and so,
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm not resilient, I failed, and that's the way we were brought up, right? It's the way we were trained. Is that those things are to me, and it's amazing if you think about the way that this doctor just said it, is she's right, right? Like I don't want to hear that I'm not resilient. Oh, but you have
Mm,
to, but she used, like I said, she used the word elasticity, and it changes then you keep reading, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Ah, dude. Well, and you probably saw me a big wide grin when you're talking about just a random person from a totally different part of the country reaches out. That is that not the coolest feeling ever, honestly, because it just shows one that so for me, I started this whole platform out of a desire to bring more of a light to leadership in the fire service. And then it just slowly kind of morphed. And, I started off and I'm like, okay, if I get maybe 1,000 video views in a year or whatever it was, whatever little, I set such a small goal. And then when I hit it in the first week, I'm like, oh gosh. And now I get, it's the same thing. Like I'll get people to just, and it's usually just random, like, hey, my chief just said this, I want your take on this. And I'm like, well, actually, I'm gonna sound like an asshole, but I'm kind of siding with your chief on this one because it's, XYZ, whatever the case is. And it's so crazy how it's through social media and the way that we can connect because that firefighter never would have known you. They could have gone to the city for a year and a half and never even crossed paths with you before, or whatever the case is. And because of what you're doing and the tools that we have at our disposal, we're able to finally get people help. And that's what makes it so
that's what makes it
incredibly
worth it.
rewarding.
So and gratifying, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
I don't benefit from that. I benefit from that in a way that I know that I helped one person, right? So
Yeah.
if the After Signal Project and your program, if we help one person, we won, right?
Yeah.
I like to ask people a lot, what does PTSD or what does suicide look like? Right? Like
Mm.
what does it look like? Is there a definition? Because I can tell you that if you were out with me, I'm the life of the party. I'm dancing on the bar. I'm having a great time. I'm making sure everyone gets home, and I'm buying drinks for people, and we're going everywhere, right? But
And
then I
you're
come
going
home,
off shift when?
yeah, and then we go home, and I'm on my deck and I can't sleep, right?
Oh,
So
yep.
what does it look like? So if anybody knows anybody that has ever harmed themselves, the normal response is, oh, he didn't show any signs, or she was I was just with him or her the other day, and like I would have never known. Yeah, because we didn't want you to know.
Right.
Like I didn't want you to know. I didn't want to be looked down upon. I didn't want to be looked like I was struggling. You
Yeah.
know, um, and there's a misconception out there that people who even contemplate like even harming themselves, they've thought about it hundreds of thousands of times.
Mm.
And that's proven, right? And I lived it. It wasn't like just one night I said I'm gonna go do this. It was, I thought about it for a long time because I couldn't, because instead of me saying maybe I can go get help, no, I'm too tough for that, right? So
Yeah. Yep.
I think that people there's no way of knowing what someone looks like unless we just straight out say, brother, sister, how you doing? You need
Mm.
you need to talk, you need help. Like, let's not beat around the bush. Ask them. Sometimes
Yeah.
the most direct question, you might get the answer that he's willing to say, you know what? Yeah, I'm struggling bad.
Mm.
Maybe that's all. Maybe not like, hey, how you doing? Like, no, just straight out ask him. And based on your leadership videos and stuff, like, comes from the top, right?
Yes.
Our leaders got to
Yep.
ask. You know,
Mm.
and we have to continue to. And when I say leaders, it doesn't have to be a lieutenant, a captain, a chief. You could
Yeah.
be a
Yeah.
5-year firefighter and be a leader,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Like most of our leaders are probably the best firefighters that we have, right? And the best police officers. You could, because your leader could be your coworker, right? 'Cause somebody you look up to. So
Mm.
I think we categorize leaders sometimes because of a test that we took or promotion that we got. You know,
Yeah.
um, that doesn't qualify you as a leader because you do well on a test. You know,
True. Yeah.
it's
Yep.
based on how you perceive yourself, right? And I'm not going to say that I'm a great leader because I struggled, right? And I still probably make mistakes. Um, but owning my mistakes now, to me, makes me a good leader, right? Like being able to admit that I was wrong, being able to admit that I made a mistake, being able to admit that I was struggling, being able to say out loud on a podcast that, oh yeah, I was hurting bad.
Mm.
I would never be able to do this 3 years ago.
I'm glad
You
you
know,
did, dude. I really am, because this is awesome. What does the immediate future look like for after the signal? What are the next steps that you got the business and company and project going toward?
so I have two shirts on the site right now. A third shirt's being developed. So I'm continuing to do that, right? Just to have to wear the message to
Mm.
start the conversation. I do have there are an opportunity for me to do some speaking events, right? And that's on my website as well. If any departments out there are looking for me to come speak to their department, I have some PowerPoint set up, whether it's on Stigma, whether it's on certain calls. There's different sections on there that they can request, and I would love to come anywhere and discuss my scenario, my life, and try to help others. I was contemplating trying to do like 100 firehouses and 100 departments in 100 days or something like that. Like I kind of looked into things like that, which might be a little bit of a stretch, but it might be a goal down the road, and just get more followers, right? The more people that follow, the more people that share.
Yeah.
In the first responder community, like if we share something that resonates, if there's something that I say that resonates with somebody, let me know. And if
Mm.
there's something that I say that you disagree with, I want to know that too, right? Like let me
Yeah.
either let me either explain why I said it or why I felt that way, or agree with you and say, you know what, brother, you're right. I was kind of wrong with that,
Yeah.
Um, so that's where I'm at with After the Signal Project. It's on Facebook, it's on Instagram at After the Signal Project, and obviously at thesignalproject.com. The more that we can continue to raise awareness,
Mm.
there's a couple of different organizations that have reached out, similar to ours. that wanna be part of the solution, right? There's so many more people that want to be part of the solution than I ever realized, right? And it just took somebody like you, somebody like me to just start the conversation, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that to me is, again, I keep on saying these same words. I used to stand up and say it's okay not to be okay, but it's just not okay to stay that way,
Uh,
right? And if we can continue to do that, if we can catch ourselves in a spiral, like we're going to spiral, it's human.
yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
where down that spiral do you get? If we can continue to catch ourselves before we get to the bottom of that spiral, we win, right?
Yeah.
My goal is to be the same as I was yesterday or slightly better.
Mm,
And if I can do that each day, I don't have to make strides tenfold. But if I can be a little bit better or the same as I was yesterday, then it's a win, and
yeah.
realize day by day, right? And day by day, if we continue to help others, um, through different platforms like yours and mine. And
Mm.
I like to say ours, right? Because we always say we're a family, right?
Yes. Oh, I
So if
hate
we're
I
going to be
hate the word I. I love it, brother. I love it.
yeah, because
I
we're a family, and we have to act like that, right?
yeah.
And I use this. I like to just to say this real quick, if you don't mind.
No, run with it, dude.
In the fire service, right? What do we do? Well, I'll put it this way: if you have a child that was struggling, and you got a phone call from their school, how quickly that your child was either showing signs of suicide or something like that, how quickly do we get your child help? Probably instantly, right?
Yeah.
You're making phone calls immediately. In the fire service, when we think one of the brothers or sisters are struggling, what do? We break their chops relentlessly until.
Yep. Yep.
So, if we're going to be a family, let's be a family, right? If someone's struggling, let's help them. You
Mm,
know, it doesn't matter, male, female. It doesn't make a difference, right? Whether you like the person, best firefighter, worst firefighter, best police officer, worst police officer, if they're struggling, they need help,
mm.
and let's get them the help they need. Whether it's just a phone call, right? Like sometimes having a conversation just like this, maybe listening to this podcast will help them say, you know what, I can do this,
Yeah.
you know, and that's the goal, right? Um, that's where I'm at anyway. I mean, and hopefully I continues to grow, and maybe one day I'll be able to do one of these. Uh, I don't like to use the word motivational speaker, like a keynote speaker, right?
Yeah.
I would
Yeah,
love
yeah.
to do that. I would love to do that, and be from the heart, right? Like
Mm.
sometimes with death by PowerPoint, you know what I mean? And
Oh, yeah. Yep.
you know,
Amen. Yeah.
have an
Let
open conversation.
let's have a class on it that's death by about not taking your own life and then make you wanna take your own life because it's all PowerPoint.
Yes, yes. Hmm.
Dude, I love it. So, I end every show with the same question, but because your topic is so important, I'm actually going to give you 2 different versions of it. So, we'll start with a slightly altered edition of it. So, newer firefighter walks into the fire station, walks up to you and says, "Lou, I'm starting to struggle. Um, what can I do? What is your one, piece of advice for that? How what are you going to do to help that firefighter out? Like, what do you recommend for that firefighter or for the firefighter that's out there listening, struggling? What do you what is your piece of advice as far as to help them get the help that they point them in the right direction?
First of all, you're not alone, right? That's probably the first thing I would say is you're not alone. You're not uh, weird for feeling this way. You're not weak for feeling this way. That would be my first thing I would say, is to let them know that this is normal, right?
Mm,
If some of these things don't bother you, you're not normal, right? And then
yep.
I would
Yep.
say, okay, brother, let's get you some help, right? What would you think would work best for you? Do you want to see if we could find you someone to speak to? What kind of hobbies do you have? What are you doing now? Let's try to change up a little bit of what you're doing. And I can tell that firefighter what works for me, right? I do a 10-minute meditation in the morning. Not every morning, I try. Or listen, why don't you try journaling? Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. But
Yeah.
give it a
Yeah.
shot for
Yeah.
a week. And maybe you find out, oh, you know what? Just writing down some things. I slept better last night, you know?
Mhm. Dude, I love it. All right. So, quick change of subject because this is a passionate leader, and you have the honor of being a boss in the biggest city. So somebody walks in and they're like, "Hey, I want to become I want to start my, my journey down the leadership pathway. So we're not, totally off of the mental health and awareness and stuff like that. Just somebody really wanting to start. They want to become the next you. They want your seat when you're ready to retire. What is your one unadulterated piece of advice to help set them up for success in the future?
Never stop learning,
Mm.
right? If the day you come into work and you don't learn something is when you should retire.
Hmm.
I go into the same buildings over and over and over again, and I learn something new about that building every time. And especially from my junior guys. My probies teach me something every single day. And if any leader that doesn't want to admit that, they're lying to you, right?
Yeah.
Because things have changed so much from when I went to probie school 20 years ago to now. Just the things, just different ways that we do things. If you don't learn from every member of your crew, then you're never going to continue to be that leader. So I guess my one piece of advice would never stop learning. Like
Awesome.
we're never too good to say, I don't know. If my one of my guys asks me, hey Lou, what do we do here? I don't know. I say, I don't know. Let's get together, guys. What do you think? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
yes, the
Yeah.
decision's on me, but like, all right, you know what? Three is think this. It sounds like a better idea than I had. You know,
Yeah.
be humble, right? Like,
Well, that's huge. That's such a huge in one of the most sought after, I think, attributes is humility, and there's so many that just don't have that. That's you're spot on, dude. Right? Because I mean, if the whole engine company is like, yeah, we're gonna go, we should do this. And you're like, nope, we're gonna do this, and then it fails. Now you got nothing but egg on your face and a bruised ego. So, but if you're humble, you're like, you know what? Yeah, the boys are actually saying we should do this. Let's see what happens, right? And then if it doesn't work out well, then you're like, I told you guys, in a in a camaraderie kind of way, not a you
exactly.
know,
Yeah, listen,
yeah,
in a risk versus reward way, right? Maybe I make a decision because of the safety of the men, right?
sure,
And they're saying, let's do this. I'm saying, well, the risk versus reward to do that, it's too much risk for the
mm,
reward. So even though their idea may be great, that's to me is like great idea, but yeah, I'm not comfortable with this, you
right,
know? So
yeah,
let's find out. So let's compromise, right? And that's what I think a strong leader should be able to do is to be able to compromise.
I love it, brother. Listen, dude, thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. So much stuff. We already kind of hit it, but let's once you go back through where guys and girls can get a hold of you if they need to, where they can reach out to you, your website and all that stuff.
Yep, it's afterthesignalproject.com. Same for Facebook and Instagram. Give me a like, give me a follow on Instagram. Feel free to message me there. Afterthesignalproject.com. You have access to the shirt orders. I'm fulfilling them as quickly as I possibly can. So, I do appreciate everyone who's definitely started that, and let's definitely wear the mission so we can start the conversation. And any departments out there that are looking for myself or anybody else to come give a little keynote speak to the department, I'm open for that as well too. So there's a link on the website to book me there.
I love it, dude. Again, thanks to all our listeners. Thank you guys so much for spending time with Chris and I today. If something in today's episode hit, make sure that you don't just sit on it, share it, and don't lie to us because if there's definitely something from today's episode that we both know hit real hard. So make sure you share it because there is somebody out there that really can benefit from hearing what Chris had to share with us today. If you want to be part of a deeper conversation with a passionate leader, make sure you're following us across all platforms. Follow After the Signal Project as well across all the platforms, guys. Please do. Likes, shares, and follows help push things across and help spread the mission of both of our worlds. Be the leader that you knew you needed when you first joined the fire service. And as always, lead with passion, serve with humility, and leave no room for bottom feeders. Until we see each other again, everybody, stay safe.